As I mentioned, the study by the British Medical Journal that claims that trans athletes who were born male have no advantage over women. Now, I had to read that twice because I thought, well, there must be a typo in there somewhere, surely. Apparently not. They're arguing there is no justification for a ban on trans women taking part in women's sport. The report, however, has sparked criticism from academics and sex-based rights campaigners who point out flaws in the way that this survey was conducted. Let's speak to Mara Yamauchi, who is a former Olympic runner. Mara, nice to have you with us. Look, I mean, people make reports, and naturally in academia and other areas of research, you know, it does sometimes depend which angle you come from, how objective these things are. Without knowing too much about the world of sport in this sense, or too much about the anatomy either, I smell a bit of a rat here, am I right?
I think you're right to smell a rat. The key thing about this meta-analysis of 52 individual studies is they haven't, the quality of the data is poor, and the authors have admitted that. So really we shouldn't be drawing any conclusions from it, but they have drawn conclusions, as you just explained in your introduction.
Yeah.
But the key flaw with it is that these studies have not controlled for fitness, so they're not comparing like with like. So, you know, an analogy is you and I go and do a running race. I would probably win because I've been an elite athlete. Therefore, you conclude women are faster than men at running. You know, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
I haven't controlled for these fundamental variables to make any conclusions robust. But apart from what this study goes into, there's one really key point, which is men will never be women. Men who believe they are women can do anything they want to their bodies within the law. They can take hormones, have surgery, wear women's clothes, grow their hair long, etc. None of that will ever make them female and never make them a woman. And women's sports are for those of us born female. So, you know, these trans-identifying males can do what they want. These academics who basically are trans activists can do all the research they want. At the end of the day, it's irrelevant because men will never be women, and women's sports are for females.
Yeah, and what's interesting about you saying that, we were discussing this, Mara, in the office before the programme, about how what you've just said there is completely non-controversial. If you had to buy a dictionary called Things That Aren't Controversial, that'd be number one on there. And this conversation 15 years ago would have sparked no debate whatsoever. But here we are in this rather interesting, and I don't know how we got here. Maybe that's a whole other debate, maybe. But now we have pylons, and we have people who, social media, of course, plays its part in all of this, that almost want to end somebody's life because they dare to suggest that men should not take part in women's sport. And I have no idea why that would be a basis of contention.
Yeah, I mean, you get cancelled for stating facts, speaking the truth, saying things like humans cannot change sex. Yeah, we are where we are. But I have to say that, you know, journals like the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which this article has been published in, have played their part in that. They are publishing this absolute nonsense, which has no credibility, and sadly some people will believe it. Another thing I want to mention about these studies that this paper has analysed is the trans-identifying males who are the subjects of the research, they have an incentive to underperform in these performance tests. You know, many, perhaps all of them, will want to compete in women's sport because they can earn good money for being not very good in some cases. So they'll get on a treadmill run, they can just deliberately go slowly and say, oh yes, that's the best I can do. And the researchers will conclude, oh, they're the same as women, you know. The fundamental sort of nature of these experiments is flawed because all these athletes can underperform. And it's also a gross insult to say that men who are hobbled by taking hormones or whatever are women. You know, women must be celebrated for what we are. We are different to men. We don't have the same physical advantages that men have. But nevertheless, we need to be celebrated as the best female athletes we are. In 2009, I was ranked second in the world in the marathon, yet 1,300 men ran faster than me. You know, should I be celebrated as the second best in the world? all kind of ignored as the 1,301st person in the world at the marathon.
So, yeah, I mean, that rather kind of beautifully explains the nonsense of all of this. And, you know, what you've just been saying there, I mean, I've got a 7-year-old. I think he could understand that. I don't think that, it doesn't, again, it doesn't take you don't have to be a clinician or an athlete or anyone really to work out what is literally, I mean, this is Emperor's New Clothes territory with booster rockets on.
Yeah, I mean, because the male and female performance in sport overlaps, you know, you will get situations where not very fit, overweight, for example, men will run the same times as much more athletic, well-trained, fit females. You can't then conclude, oh, they're the same, therefore competition between them is fair.
Yeah.
Because males have an advantage. You know, there are plenty of unfit, overweight men in the world. You know, do we put them in women's sport? No.
Yeah, that would, well, maybe we should. That would be, it'd be interesting as a spectator activity, that's for sure. In terms of, I mean, things that are quite obvious, you know, I mean, Sharon Davis, as I'm sure you're aware, also speaks very well on this and talks through, you know, some of the specifics of bone structure and muscle mass and goodness knows what. I mean, it's really not hard to understand. So why do you think there are, you know, you can understand a few political agitators who want to mess things up and, you know, argue this point. Interesting, not always trans people either, just those who are in that part of the political spectrum who seem to be very animated about this. But so we see those people, but then we see experts, as we hear with this British Medical Journal, supposed experts, come out and say it. And that's where I sort of think, what sort of upside down world are we living in when one would assume that people behind the British Medical Journal, some of them are probably qualified doctors and the like. What the heck is going on?
Well, there are a number of reasons which explain how we've got where we are. I mean, on sport, 2 of the studies that this study analysed were written by Joanna Harper and Blair Hamilton, who are both males who say they're women who've competed in women's sport. So they have an incentive to prove that trans women have no advantage over women. I think it's also male entitlement. These men want to be in women's sports, women's prisons, toilets, changing rooms, rape crisis centres, the lot.
Yeah.
And they just help themselves. They have absolutely no respect for women's boundaries. And the people who are in the positions of power who could say no are just too cowardly.
I think that's correct.
To say no.
Yeah, I think they are scared. They think it sounds a little bit like an ism. Is it racism, homophobia? Is it in the same ballpark? Spoiler alert, it's not in the same ballpark, this debate, but there is a group of people that sort of think it is, and if they don't go along with it, and we've seen this with, you know, big corporations when it comes to the box you tick, you know, which gender are you? And they list 100 of them, and you think, really? And I think they're joining in with something because they think it makes them kinder in a curious way.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, you know, gay rights, civil rights for ethnic minorities. All of those, you know, all of those fights were good things, and, you know, people shouldn't be discriminated against on their sexual orientation or their skin colour. But this is different. Trans-identifying males are males, and males are adult human males, or men in other words.
Yeah.
They have the lion's share of everything. They have better pay than women. They have the lion's share of sport, top jobs. They control everything. These are not marginalized, stigmatized people. They're a subgroup of men. And people in positions of power really need to summon up the courage to say no to them. What I think this really boils down to in the end is male entitlement and the inability of too many people to say no to men's demands. I mean, for some of them also it is a sex fetish. You know, many of these men have what's called autogynephilia. They have a fetish. They want to be validated by women, and they use female athletes in sport, female prisoners in the female prisoner state, women in endometriosis support groups. as validation for their beliefs that they are women. But humans can't change sex, I'm afraid, so they never will be women.
Indeed. You said right at the beginning, Mara, you could probably beat me in a race. I'm not so sure about that. But
okay,
actually,
let me know when we'll do it.
Yeah, you still, I mean, as you say, you've had an impressive career in running, track and field, cross country, you name it. Are you still out there on a daily basis, pounding the pavements or the fields?
Yeah, I try to run 4 to 5 times a week. I'm 52 now, and it's a long time since I retired. Yeah. I'm currently nursing an injury, but yeah, I love to run. It's good for my physical and mental health. I coach as well, so I need to stay fit.
So if I take you on with the injury, then I've got a chance.
Maybe.
What's an average run for you? How long is an average run distance?
Nowadays, I do maybe 40 minutes to an hour. Sometimes shorter. I think I've got a lot of wear and tear.
Well, you've been doing it all your life. What sort of distance is that then, if you do sort of an hour's run?
I run about 4.5 minutes per kilometre, so 45 minutes would be roughly 10k.
Right. You do that 4 times a week?
Yes. Just try to stay fit. Yeah. If I try to do too much or go too fast, I end up with injuries. But let me know the date of our race and I'll be there.
All right. What about 4:30? Mara, great to have you on with us. We will speak again, I'm sure. That's